Slappna av, ta ett djupt andetag, var helt naturliga. You live in a house by the great forest with your parents and your brother Hansel. Your parents are both unemployed and life is hard. You have little to eat and certainly no internet or cell phone or vacations. Your clothes are hand-me-downs from distant cousins. One night, when you're lying in the old IKEA bed you share with your brother, you can hear your parents talking through the paper-thin walls. Your father says, "What is to become of us? How are we to feed our poor children when we can barely feed ourselves?" Your mother replies, "I'll tell you what, husband. The children are old enough to survive on their own. Early tomorrow morning we will take them into the deepest reaches of the forest. There we shall light a fire for them and give each of them one more piece of bread, and then we shall leave them." "No, wife," your father says. "I will not do that. How can I bear to leave my children alone in the forest? The wild animals would soon come and tear them to pieces, where they might wander into an irradiated zone." "Oh, you fool," says your mother. "Then we must all four die of hunger. You may as well dig 4 graves in the backyard." And your mother goes on arguing with your father until finally he gives in. "But I feel sorry for the poor children all the same," he says. "The time to feel hungry and sorry for yourself has passed. What to do? It is time to act." When your parents have fallen asleep, you get out of your beds and try to open the bedroom door, but it's locked. Hans runs over to the window, even though you both know it was nailed shut long ago to keep burglars out. You both go back to bed and hold each other tight, crying yourselves to sleep. The next morning, your mother wakes you up. "Get up, lazy bones. We are going into the forest to look for spare parts." She gives you and your brother a piece of bread each. "Here is something to eat for dinner, but do not eat it too soon, for this is all you get." You all set out for the forest together. The trees stand so close together that it's almost dark. Nothing grows on the forest floor but mushrooms that have grown huge and toxic from radiation. Every once in a while, Hansel stops and looks back to remember the way. Finally, your father says, "Hansel, why are you falling behind and what are you looking at?" "Forgive me, father, but I thought I saw a deer." "Silly boy," your father replies. "There haven't been deer in these parts for years." You are deeper into the forest than you have ever been before. You come to a little clearing and your father says, "Now, children, pile up some wood and I will light a fire that you may not be cold." You gather brushwood and dead branches into a huge pile, as high as a little hill. Your father lights it, and when the flames are burning very high, your mother says, "Now, children, lay yourself down by the fire and rest. We will go look for scrap metal at an old factory we heard about. When we are done, we will come back and fetch you home." You sit by the fire, and when the sun sinks lower, you eat some bread. You fall asleep. The sound of footsteps wake you up. It is dark night, and the fire has gone out, and someone is out there in the darkness. You both cry with fear. "It's only me," your father says. "I have come to fetch you home." He takes you by the hand and leads you back through the forest. When you return home, your mother is standing in the kitchen. She stares at the three of you for a moment and then cries, "Why are you so late? It has been dark for hours." As you lay in bed once more, you can hear your parents arguing. "Why did you take them home again?" your mother says. "I have told you they are old enough to fend for themselves. My parents did the same when I was little, and so did yours." "I couldn't stand the thought of them alone in the darkness," your father replies. "Well, the food is almost gone again," says your mother. "We have a can of beans left, and that is all. The children must go. We will take them further into the forest so that they will not find their way out again. It is for their own good and ours. When you think your parents fall asleep, you try to sneak outside, but the door is locked. Hans comforts you. Do not cry, Gretel. Go to sleep quietly. Early in the morning, your parents drive you out of your beds and give you a can of beans to share. This is the last can of beans, your mother says, and you will get nothing else today, so be very mindful of it. You put the beans in your pocket and hold it tight. Your father takes your other hand, and together the four of you walk into the forest. Today, your parents lead you even deeper into the forest, where you have never been before. Just like yesterday, you make a great fire, and your mother says, just wait here, children, and when you are tired, you may sleep a little. In the evening, we will come and fetch you home. It is noon, and you share the beans with your brother. Then you fall asleep. You do not wake until it's dark night. You are both scared. But Hansel comforts you and says, our parents promised to come and fetch us home, and so they will. Perhaps they are late because they found more spare parts than they can carry. The moon comes out and makes its way across the sky. The fire has shrunk into a pile of embers. Still your parents do not return. The moon sets and mist settles on the ground, and the sun rises to burn the mist away, but your parents do not return. You make a nest under an old pine in the clearing to hide from the acid rain and the strange creatures howling in the woods at night. You sing to each other and tell stories and cry yourself to sleep. 2 more days come and go. You are sick with thirst and hunger, but your parents do not return. On the 3rd night, when you are sure you must soon die of thirst, there is a flash of light. You crawl out from under your tree and see a red distress flare hanging in the eastern sky. Someone needs help, Hansel says. You join hands and stumble through the forest on weak legs toward the light. If someone is about to be rescued, perhaps you can be rescued too. You come out of the trees and see a huge sign that says, Summerland. It is an amusement park, but the sign is covered in vines and the ground is overgrown with grass and weeds. The Ferris wheel is still and the roller coaster is falling apart. But look, in the middle of the park is a fairy tale castle, shining in bright colors. And there, a carousel spinning round and round. And there, a chocolate wheel. And the prizes are still there. The chocolate bars and pralines are white with age, but still tasty. And you eat until you can eat no more. Suddenly, a soft voice whispers through the speaker system. Nibble, nibble, gnaw. Who's nibbling at my prices? The wind, the heaven-born wind, answers Hans. You find bottles of soda in the moldy fridge of a soda stand. When you have sated your thirst and hunger, you turn your attention to the attractions. Such wonderful horses, carousels, and bumper cars that work. But best of all is the fairy tale castle. You hop into a carriage shaped like a flying boat, and it takes you through wonderful sceneries where gnomes and djinn and fairies wave at you from magical landscapes. And there, a scary witch by a house on chicken legs. She smiles at you and steps out of the frame and pushes a big red button. The boat stops, and you realize it's a real person, an old woman. Oh, you dear children, who has brought you here? You look so hungry and cold. Welcome to my house. No harm shall come to you. She takes you by the hand and opens a door at the back of the scenery. On the other side is a big kitchen with an iron stove. Sausages, garlic braids and herbs hang from the rafters, and on the kitchen table sits a bowl of real apples. It's nice to have company, says the old woman. Sit down and let's get some food into you. You have spicy sausages with smashed potatoes and pancakes with sugar and apples and fresh bread slathered with real butter, and finally ginger cookies and hot chocolate with whipped cream on top. When you are so full you can barely move, the old woman shows you to a couple of little beds. She tucks you in between clean white linen sheets. You think about the day you've had, then suddenly remember why you came here. Someone needed rescue. You had forgotten all about it. There is just an old woman stirring a pot on the stove. Who is she, really? You wake up because Hansel is screaming. He is sitting bolt upright in bed, and the old woman is holding his arm. She turns toward you, sniffing in the air, as if she can smell that you are awake. Her dim eyes glow bright red. You can see her for what she is, a ravenous beast, a murderer, a witch. She lets out a raspy laugh that makes your blood run cold and says, "Such morsels, all plump and rosy. I have you now. You will not escape me." The witch pulls Hansel out of bed and drags him by the arm to the Robin Hood scenery, which has a cage with an iron door. You hit the witch with your fists, you kick her, you hang on to her legs, but she does not even notice. She throws Hansel in the cage and locks the door. Hansel screams in fright. "Scream as you might, it will not help you," says the witch. She wheezes and grabs your neck. "Now, my dear, I can see you are a clever girl, and I'm sure you are a good cook, too. You are going to fatten your brother up, and since you are such a clever girl, I think you know what I shall do when he is nice and plump, and what will happen to you if you don't obey." You do as the witch commands. You make stews and puddings and pies for Hans from the witch's unending supply of food. You discover that, just like the witch said, you are a good cook. You find yourself enjoying the routines, fetching water in the morning, stoking the fire, baking, cooking, washing, everything in order and everything in its rightful place. For the first time in your life, you feel at peace. Hansel sits in his stinking prison, getting fatter and fatter every day. Every morning the old hag creeps up to Hansel and cries out, "Stretch out your finger, that I may feel if you will soon be fat." Hansel holds out a little chicken bone to her, and the witch is blind enough to think it is his finger. Every morning she is astonished that there seems to be no way of fattening him. For the first 3 weeks you are relieved that your brother is spared, but eventually you become impatient, because nothing is happening. Something must change, for better or worse. When 4 weeks have passed, and Hansel still remains thin, the witch takes you by the neck again. "You will bring me some water and spices in the morning tomorrow. Fat or lean, tomorrow I will kill and cook him." You nod, and the witch smiles at you. "Such a clever girl," she says. "You would have made a good apprentice." Early in the morning you fetch water and spices. When you come into the kitchen, the witch has already stoked a fire under the baking oven. On the table sits a butcher knife and a club. "We will bake first," says the witch. "I have already heated the oven and kneaded the dough." She beckons you closer to the enormous oven. The heat is enough to burn your cheeks. "Crawl inside and see if it's properly heated so that we can put the bread in." You look at the witch, who has a sly look into her eyes. What is it that she's planning? You pretend not to understand her and look at her with big questioning eyes. "Go on, clever girl. The door is big enough," says the witch. She gives you a small push, but you resist, looking as dumb as you can. "Climb in. The door is big enough. Just look, I can get in myself." And she thrusts her head into the oven. You give the witch a push. It drives her far into the oven. Then you shut the iron door and quickly fasten the bolt. The hag shrieks and howls as she burns to death. When the screaming stops, you run to your brother and opens his cage. Hansel leaps out and you embrace each other. You spend a couple of days just playing around in the abandoned fairground. You grab funny cartoon backpacks from the Wheel of Fortune and scavenge everything you can. Toys, candy, bucketfuls of change. In a shed outside the fairy tale castle, you find a pile of old wallets, some of them still with money and credit cards inside. These are far better than pebbles, said your brother, and tosses a handful of coins in the air. He seems to already have forgotten the horrors of the cage. But let us be off. This is still the witch's lair and I want to go home. You start back the way you came, but when you have walked for 2 hours, you come to a wide river. The water is dark and smells like sewage. We cannot cross. I see no bridge and it looks toxic, says Hans. He is right, but look there. It's a little duck from the pond in the fairground, floating in the water near the shore. You clear your throat and cry out, little duck, dost thou see 2 new users waiting for thee? There's not a plank, no bridge in sight. Take us across, or thy back's a white. The lights in the duck's eyes switch on. It's working. The duck lets out a rusty quack and it comes over to you. The seat has just enough room for the both of you. The duck takes you across the river, playing gentle music through hidden speakers. It whacks after you as you walk into the forest on the other side. It looks somehow very lonely on the shore. You continue on your journey, and after a little while, the forest seems more and more familiar to you. As the sun sinks toward the horizon, you finally see your house. You both run as fast as you can to the house, all the way into the kitchen, and throw yourself into your parents' arms. Your parents are overjoyed but also ashamed. They are so sorry for leaving you out in the forest and ask for your forgiveness, and you and your brother forgive them both. You empty your pockets and backpacks and show your parents all the riches you have brought home. All your hardships disappear as you set out to buy a new house, a car, and everything your hearts desire. With all your troubles at an end, you live together in perfect happiness. The end.